Hey, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Evolution Project, our podcast. And one of the cool things about this podcast is, I kind of feel like I'm sharing the gems of my life, which are the relationships with my friends, with you. And one of the things I feel really blessed is that I have cool friends. And so this is Danny. And Danny today is going to talk a little bit about his journey with the Evolution Project and really just life. Danny, you are not the person that I met 5 years ago. Probably longer than that, actually.
Yeah, it's been longer.
Yeah, it's been a lot longer. Well, would you do me a favor and maybe just kind of give like a quick little intro on Danny Edvalson and, who you are and just kind of where you're at right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in the Boise area and had all brothers. We had a great growing up. We did all the stuff that kids raised in the 80s and 90s did, and really just loved every minute of it. From there, we just have done one business to another. My wife and I, we've now been married for 20 years. We got married in May of 2005, and we've got 8 kiddos at home. Age ranges are from 18 to 6.
hmm
And we are just loving life now down here in the Mapleton area in Utah, and has been quite the journey.
And we're going to really dive into that because I remember, okay, so this is a good little reference point. I remember I was at a soccer game with one of my kids and I was talking to you. And this had to have been like, I want to say like 2018-ish. And I started to kind of talk to you about Evolution Project and the stuff going on. And I'm a processor where I process like verbally. I just talk out loud and stuff. And do you remember that conversation, Danny?
Yeah, I remember that conversation. I remember right where I was too. I was driving between Dallas and Oklahoma on a business trip, and
So
I was passing the muddiest lake I have ever seen. It was just brown water.
do you remember the gist of that conversation? Like we talked for a while. I remember sitting against a school and watching my son play soccer. And I just remember I was like just talking and talking and talking, which is great. Thanks for the therapy session. I probably still owe you for it.
Yes, you did.
But do you remember what we were talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, you were talking about Evolution Project and the introduction of it to me, and the conversation was around the basic concept that masculinity is either both a lost definition or a lost art. And you wanted to create a space where men could feel that and could realign with themselves and just almost come to themselves again and regain that part of them.
Thank you. That's probably more eloquently than I could have said it. Here's what I find interesting. So I'm talking to the 2025 version of Danny Edvalson, knowing that I had that conversation with you. And then I started kind of moving towards doing the Evolution Project. And at first, right, there was definitely some resistance to you coming, even though we were really good friends, right? There's this part where it's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I actually think it's good to give some voice to this because one thing I found is sometimes people raise their hand really easy and go, I'm in, let's go. And then other times people are like, I'm interested, but I don't know if I'm in right now. And then other times people are like, that sounds really crazy. I'm good. I don't want to do that. Where did you fit in that category when we first started talking about it? And what did your life look like?
Yeah, when we first started talking about it, I thought it was a really cool idea for you to do. Like, hey, yeah, Bryan, if you feel like that's a good thing, shoot, dog, you go and do that, and I'll watch from the sidelines. And my initial take was not that, the resistance that I felt towards it wasn't that I disagreed with the concept necessarily. It was more that you wanted me to spend money on it. I had no idea what value I was going to get out of it.
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm going to spend some money, I like to know what am I going to get out of it. The second thing also though was that there was a lot of conflict and tension and in my marriage, and I felt like it was up to me to figure it out. I didn't feel like going up to a camp with a bunch of other men was going to be the solution to that.
Mhm.
And that has always been kind of my pride and my hubris, which is, yeah, I've got this, I've got it figured out. Or if I don't have it figured out, then I should at least be able to be the one to figure it out. Just give me some time, just give me some time.
Yeah.
And, it was that way for a little while. And then we reached a point where my wife very lovingly, but very firmly said, hey, you know what? You should consider going away for a while. and figure yourself out. And when you come back, I would love to know that version of you. And that was a real wake up call for me. And I didn't really know where else to go. I've been a religious person my whole life, and I felt like I had been trying to apply all of the principles that I knew. I felt like I'd been trying to apply them to my marriage, wasn't working. I felt like I was trying to apply them to my own life, didn't seem to be producing the results that I what felt either promised or that I craved and I reached a point where, there was a moment I still remember. I was sitting out under our gazebo out back in our yard in Rexburg. And I just had this realization, oh my gosh, I need to call Bryan and tell him that I'm going to come to the Evolution Project. And so I called you and I came to the Evolution Project, and my life has not been the same since.
Hmm.
The experience there, I went fairly closed off, still with the attitude of like, okay, like we'll see what this is all really about. The concept of men's work was still new to me. The idea that somebody else was going to help me create some kind of magic bullet. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I was just really judgmental and critical and closed off to everybody in the group, really, and doing my normal social pecking order, like, hey, where do I fit into this group?
Yeah,
You know,
that's
and
yeah. By the and that's actually pretty common. I mean, something I probably should have started this off with is like Danny now facilitates Evolution Project with me. Like we work together on this. And so that would have probably been a good thing to say up front. So let's reverse it like 10 minutes and say, hi, this is Danny. One of the reasons Danny's on here is because he does this with me and I really want to hear his story and I want everyone to hear it. Let's start over. No, just kidding. Okay, so you came and you were doing men thing. You were doing what men do. The joke is, we emotionally measure ourselves around people. We physically do it, right? Like, okay, that guy's pretty big. He could probably kill me. I could probably take that guy. That guy's not very smart. That guy's really smart. All the
yeah,
things we do, our ego does to say, please don't hurt me. Please don't break anything that I've got set up in this frame of Danny Edvalson that's got the world under control, clearly. Right, Danny?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And essentially in that first little bit of getting to know the men that were up there, basically, creating the persona that I was going to present to them and and just going with it, starting there. And, again, I felt that that it was a good experience. I felt like most men do when they come up to Evolution Project, which is there's a lot of work that we do that is beneath the surface.
Hmm.
And so I wasn't accustomed to it at the time. And it by the end of the first evening, I felt like I'd been there for a week. And I've just thought, I just don't know how much more, like I don't know how much more of this I can take, honestly. But I distinctly remember, like, look, I've got my stuff figured out. There's people in the group here that are saying weird stuff, or they're saying stuff where I'm like, okay, I mean, if that's how your cookie crumbles, that's great, man. That's great. But I felt like I had it all figured out. I had it all compartmentalized. This is what I'll take from this. This is what I won't take from this.
Hmm.
And I will go and I'll control how I exit the Evolution Project and what I take home. What I wasn't expecting was Friday night we did a sound bath, and I was like, "What are we doing? We're laying down on these mats. We're getting a blanket over us, and then you're going to hit these sound bowls. And what's supposed to happen? Like what are we gonna? I mean, what is supposed to happen?" And I remember it so distinctly. The person playing the sound bowls, he played each sound bowl just for 2 minutes. That was it. And he just moved on. And I remember when he got to the solar plexus sound bowl, that I don't know the note, but when he got to that bowl and he hit it, my body just felt all sorts of dissonance. Like something was, kind of the same feeling internally as if somebody scratches their fingernails on a chalkboard or something like that. That's what I felt internally. And then about somewhere between, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds later, it resolved itself and I felt in harmony with that frequency.
Hmm.
And I was like, what was that? What just happened? And for the first time, that was the first moment that I thought, oh my goodness, I don't think I have the answers. I think there's more. There's something more in this world right here that I don't understand. And I didn't say anything to anybody at the end of that night. I just, wow, that was interesting. We went to bed. And then the next morning, I'd never done breath work, but sure enough, same guy that did the sound bowls, we get up and we do breath work. And again, I was like my persona wouldn't allow me to think it was stupid because everybody else was doing it. Right. So I didn't want to put off an air of, what's going on, but same kind of response, which was, yeah, this is, what is this? I mean, I've never done anything like this. I don't know what to expect. So when we got into breath work, and the general experience that I had with breath work was very, very normal. I didn't have any crazy visions. I didn't have any visitations. I didn't find myself prancing through the fields listening to Irish bagpipes or Scottish bagpipes. It wasn't anything like that, but I did have an experience where at the very end of that session of breath work, I had an experience that can only be explained as though I could feel that my spirit was distinctly separate than my body. And that was kind of all that happened, but it was huge because in that moment, at that time in my life, I was so focused on everything that I could see, everything that I could measure, everything that I could feel. And I didn't give a lot of weight or a lot of presence to the things that are beneath the surface. Mm. In fact, if I'm just remembering, I actually wasn't sure that they existed. And that experience with breath work just did enough to break the shell, to crack the shell, to maybe suggest that there's more to discover here. So that sound bath and then the breath work combined with the work that we had done up to that point created created enough of an opening that I could start to see something beyond what I could understand physically, mentally.
So that was kind of like a new experience for you, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So, Danny, this was trying to get like a timeline reference. So we talked about in like 2018, 2021, I believe is when you first came. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
And then, so you attend the first one, you have some of these experiences where you're walking out of that experience going, okay, that wasn't what I thought it would be, maybe, right? You had some breakthrough or opening moments. I liked how you said that. Since then, Danny, a lot has happened in your life, right? Both professionally and personally. I can think of a few, but I feel like our conversations now are so much different than our conversation even just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So how has that evolution, like, what does that actually look like? I mean, you've exited a business, you become a facilitator in breath work, you took kind of a sabbatical for a period of time, you moved locations, your marriage is awesome. And it wasn't like it wasn't awesome, but I mean, it's like,
It wasn't awesome.
okay, there we go. So maybe just explain it, because I think this is when people ask me, like, what is the evolution project and like, what does it look like in someone's life when they're quote doing the work? There's so many cliche things that I think are said around men's work. One of our sayings that we say is the work is the work is the work is the work. And it just takes whatever it takes. Like that's it. And nobody can do it for you, but you can't do it by yourself. So like, how can two things be true at the same time? How can these dichotomies exist? And, Danny, as I've witnessed your evolution, one, it's really been inspiring. Two, selfishly, I have gained so much from your evolution and conversations that we've had that's had massive impact in my life. I'd like to know, like, what did that look like for you over a period of time? I mean, did you ever have moments where you're like, is this what going crazy is really like? Or like, is everything falling apart or is it falling back into, like, what does that look like? What did it feel like? What was it like?
Well, I think that maybe the best way to express that might be to share two pieces that we talk about frequently. The first one is the story of the Golden Buddha.
Mhm.
We love to use that story. It's a powerful story. And as you know, the story goes essentially that there's this beautiful golden Buddha in a village. And where's the country? What country? We're talking about Thailand. We're
Let's do
talking about
Thailand. I
China.
love Thailand. Let's do that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. And but there's an invading army. So what the villagers do is that they cake it in plaster and mud and dirt and everything else. And then of course the invading army comes and they say, "Wow, cool Buddha," but they move on. They don't think of it. And then time goes on and everybody forgets that actually that Buddha is made of pure gold until someone at some point comes up against it, cracks some of the plaster off, and sure enough, beneath it is this beautiful gold color. Um, and it was difficult, and it's still the story for me of at some point believing that I am a golden Buddha on the inside, which means I am infinite worth, all those types of things. And I'm also the one that has caked on all the plaster. But it's not just that I'm the one that caked on all the plaster. I'm the one that has caked on all the plaster and then called it real. So now the conversation becomes, how do I see it? Or actually, maybe said a better way, since we're just kind of talking through this analogy, is that I'm the one that has caked on the plaster and then called it gold, because everything that I can see are the things that I take pride in, that I attach to, that I think are real life. But the reality is that all those things that I created are just a construct to help me create a worldview that I can swim with
Mhm.
and to protect me. And so how deeply and how thoroughly can I both seek out the plaster and remove it?
I mean, think of your mindset going into the evolution project. Like, essentially, that is you just described your first 6 hours at evolution project.
Totally. Yeah. But it's not just that, I mean, it is that certainly, but it's also the way that I view myself as a business professional, the way that I view myself as a husband and a father, the way that I made sure that I was always on the correct side morally, right? The way that I mean, you could go on and on about all the definitions and attachments that I had that were designed to present a certain image to the outer world, but not even to the outer world of myself, so that I felt good about where I was in the outer world. And I'll just connect these two dots. The process of pulling down the plaster, I believe, is found in a quote that you and I also love, which it was by Oliver Wendell Holmes, Chief Justice of the United States, back in I believe the early 1900s. I don't think you'd want to quote me on that though. Anyway, he said that I wouldn't give two figs for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my whole life for the simplicity on the other side of complexity. And the first time I read that book, it's in the book called Faith is Not Blind. And I actually stopped reading the book when I came across that quote. Not because I don't think the rest of it's useful. In fact, I should probably go back and revisit it. But that quote struck me so deeply because the process of removing plaster or the dirt and that process is actually painful a lot of times. And a lot of times my journey has been that I have to make sense of something. I have to make sense of my life without the plaster. And that doesn't come naturally for me. So I'll have a viewpoint or a lens about what the world looks like. And then I'll realize I only have that viewpoint because that's a viewpoint that protects me. But it's so innately baked into how I see the world that I don't even know how to see the world without that viewpoint. And as I start to walk through that is the complexity. Because then you start to ask questions. I start to ask questions like, well, what would it actually look like if I didn't have to be respected by people? What would it look like if I didn't have to be viewed as kind? What would it look like if I actually do what I need to do as a father, even if my kids think that I'm being a bad father and that's how they come to see me? What does it look like and you can go through all of these. And that's just a small handful of the attachments that I have had. But as you wade through the complexity, then what happens is that for me, it starts to resolve for as long as I'm willing to stay in the space where it feels weird, actually. It feels like, well, shoot, like I don't even know how to think about life like that. Okay. That's where it gets complex. But if I will just sit in that and be willing to stay in that and continue to walk forward, what I find is that on the other side of that, there's a simplicity that is both profound and enlightening and that changes everything.
Yeah, and so Danny, when you shared that quote with me, that's like actually become one of my favorite quotes too. And almost inevitably, whenever I say it, people always pause and it's almost like a pattern interrupt because they're like, wait. And then they'll usually say, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? And I always tell people how I interpret it is direct experience. You have to go through the complexity of something to find the simplicity of it. And maybe you don't have to, but I believe that when you do that, like you're on the other side of something and one of the things I think's beautiful and challenging in the world we live in right now is to some extent things are very much more accessible to us, right? Um, Especially now with like AI, right?
Yeah.
I could utilize AI and I could utilize it to make me look really great, right? I could write books, I could, put really great content together and everything. And I could make it look like on a web page and social media and all that stuff like, wow, dude, Bryan really knows what he's doing. And then somebody says, hey, Bryan, will you come and speak to a men's group for me really quick? I'd love for you to add further depth on the stuff you've been sharing and the book you wrote. And then I'm like, oh, sweet. And I get up there and I'm like, what does it say in my book again? What is it? Because it was so easy to obtain. I didn't actually go through the process of the work. I just wanted the fruits of the other side of it. But I haven't really gone through the complexity. I haven't been up at 2 o'clock in the morning, taking serious accountability and going through my life and saying, like, I'm not in alignment and attunement with myself right now. And the honest conversations, like you said, oftentimes it's through pain, but the other side of that is just so much sweeter and it's so much richer. I think about my relationship with my spouse. I can genuinely say, like, I am in love with my wife. And I could always tell you that I loved my wife,
Mm.
but I'm in love with her. And I'm experiencing a life that I feel like may have always been there. But now that I've gone through some things, it's so much deeper. My appreciation for the moment of what is just so much greater, right? And I just want to tell you that, like, these principles, that we're talking about, there's a head and heart conversation constantly going on. Sometimes it's cool to be smart or to feel like we're smart because we have access to all these things. We've read the book, we've listened to the podcast, we've done that. But then it's like, what's the direct experience with that? Oh, well, Danny did this and I read about that and I watched this movie, but it's like, no, what about you? Like, what does that actually look like in your real life? And Danny, one of the things that I've really enjoyed witnessing you is how you are a student of life. That's how I would define you. And like your curiosity with breath work, like that has led to many things. Would you maybe expand a little bit on breath work and the space that that holds in your life right now, and maybe how that has helped you making big decisions, regulating the self, acting from a truer sense of self?
Sure. Yeah. Breathwork has played a very central role in my like very central role in my personal transformation and journeys through the complexity, through the weeds. And I fully believe that breathwork is spirit work. When we read the Old Testament and it says that God breathed into Adam the breath of life and he became a living soul, I think that's not an accident. And and when you look at ancient cultures and you realize that, for example, in Latin, the word breath and the word spirit share the same exact root word, which is spiritus. There's something about the combination of breath and spirit, or the synonym, the harmony of that word, or those words, or those concepts, that I think is easily lost in today's world. I believe that there's a direct connection with our breath and our spirit to our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And our nervous system it responds to outward stimulus as it should. But if you watch an NBA player, Take any NBA player, basically. And if they've got a set of clutch free throws to make in order to clinch the game or whatever the case is, one of the simplest strategies is to take a breath right before they perform the action. Why do they do that? They do that to calm the nervous system. They do that because we are holistic beings. Even that guy, Steph Curry, that we're watching on the TV, that is a spirit who is embodied in a physical body. And in that moment, in that culmination, when he's got to put these 2 free throws away to ice the game, what he is doing, even at the height of that moment, is he is using his breath to calm his nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So breath work, there's lots of modalities of it and lots of great ones. I don't profess to have a better one or a worse one there's just a lot of different modalities. And breath plays its role in our lives all over the place. So if you really want to have your children de-escalate when they are escalated, the very simplest way to do that is to gather them up, put them on your lap or hug them, and then say, breathe with me. You take 3 breaths, and whatever it was that the nervous system is responding to in that moment will de-escalate. So what breath work has done for me over time is it has done that in what I would consider to be the aggregate. So my nervous system is constantly responding to stimulus, and my ego and my mind is also attaching to what my nervous system is responding to. So when I trigger at something makes me upset or angry, what's really happening is that I feel something that is causing my nervous system to trigger, puts everything on alert, and suddenly you go into fight or flight mode. And you're either going to defend yourself to the death or you're going to attack the other person. Either way, what you're doing is that you're proving yourself to not be wrong.
Mm.
So what breath work has done for me ultimately is to release the need to protect myself. Now, I don't mean that physically. Of course, if there's a physical threat, then we're going to respond, and we're going to respond in a healthy way based on what our nervous system is telling us. But if my 9-year-old punches my 6-year-old, my 9-year-old's a little boy, my 6-year-old's a little girl, and I want to get big and nasty and trigger about that, that is not the same thing as I'm in danger. That is an opportunity to discuss some things with my 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, well, let me just kind of sidetrack. The reason that I trigger in that situation is actually not for my little girl. It's because of me. I know they're kids. Logically, I know they're kids. I could rationale through it. If I'm reading the same scenario on the page of a book, I could say, yeah, I understand that. 9-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl, they got in a scuffle. Okay, I get that. So here's a good example of maybe what the parent could do in this moment. But do I do that? Well, maybe I do. But if I act based on my trigger, I for sure don't. So how do I deregulate that? I'm not jumping in to defend actually my little girl, even though on the surface, that's what it seems. The reality is that I feel that threat personally.
Mm.
My nervous system is responding personally to that threat. And so breath is the way that our nervous system can calm down, can relax, and allow our lizard brain to get into our thinking brain. So over time, as I became a breathwork facilitator and facilitated and completed both, hundreds of sessions, what I came to see both personally and in others over and over and over again were things that the layers that people were experiencing on the outside. So the challenges of professional life, the pain maybe of their marriage, the pain that they feel maybe as a failure of a father or a husband or a whatever it might be. The difficulty that feeling not enough, and you could go on and on. All of these layers are sitting above the nervous system.
Yeah.
And when we do breath work, it just pulls all those layers and opens them right up so that we can get to our core.
Yeah, I feel like breath has been such a central part of the work because it creates this space where people can, I think presence is probably the biggest thing that comes up for me. And in those moments, it's like the big reveal. often can happen because it quiets the mind, the parasympathetic nerve, I guess, as it says, right? And it allows people to like, I just discover, I don't know. I mean, when I watched, like, one of the gifts that I get is when I feel like I get to watch a breathwork session with you guys because I'm watching you facilitate. And then I love when you'll like lean over to me and be like, hey, look at that guy over there, And it's not like, look at him, look at him. You're like, you can clearly see like there is something going on. There's energy in the room. There's things moving. And I loved how you said that earlier. It's like the unseen, like there's these things that exist in the world. Actually, I'm going to reference this. That picture of Christ that you have where he's on the boat and it's the middle of the night and it's this just still ocean, beautiful sky. And then somebody says to Danny, he goes, Danny, what does that picture mean to you? Because of all the pictures you could put up in your house, like that's the one you chose. And I loved your answer. Would you share that with everybody?
Yeah, he said, what does it make you feel?
Feel. That's right.
And I thought, because every time that I see that picture, in fact, it's just right there. Every time I see that painting, it reminds me that, so before this question was asked, I just felt expansive whenever I would see that picture. And it
Hmm.
reminded me of several breathwork sessions that I have had when I would just feel expansive, open, as big as the universe. But in that moment, as I thought about it, I realized that that painting, that picture reminds me that everything that is real in my life comes from the unseen world, not from what I can perceive.
And if I would
Because,
have,
yeah,
if Danny 5, 6, 7 years ago, you told Danny that 5, 6, 7 years ago, what would have Danny said?
he would have been like, what are you talking about? But
You,
now,
you, you almost believed the opposite of that to some degree, right? Not fully, but I don't know.
well, yeah, but the real issue is that what do we categorize as things we can see? What I didn't appreciate is that the way that our mind constructs our reality is as much a physical sense as anything else. And what I mean by that is that two people can have the same experience and walk away. They can have the same outward stimulus and walk away with two totally different interpretations.
Yeah.
Which means, of course, that neither one of their interpretations of the stimulus is objectively true. And once I came to understand that and realize that even the way that I have constructed this in my own mind mentally, like, and by this, I mean life, and probably, I don't know, maybe we're getting into the ether layers for this podcast, but the way that I've constructed my own definitions and everything else like that around life, that is as much a physical sense as anything else.
Hmm.
And so everything else, though, the things that are the most real to me come when I take all of those things and set them aside. So if you do a breathwork session and then ask yourself, okay, you're done with the breathwork session, you're just sitting there. It doesn't matter if you had some big reveal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is you just ask yourself this question. Doesn't matter if you fell asleep even. It doesn't matter if you're looking around the room and everybody else is like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. And you're thinking to yourself, why was that so amazing? I literally just breathed, not really sure what even happened. If in the midst of that, you will stop and ask yourself openly this question: what do I know is true about my life? Your response to that, what comes up in that moment, will be undiluted, which is very different than if you ask yourself, what do I think is true about my life? You will get two really distinct and different answers in those two questions,
Hmm.
because what you know and what your soul knows is true that is not concerned with all the layers above it. That's what breathwork does. It opens up that conduit so that you can access the truth, even just to yourself. It doesn't matter if you're religious, not religious. Doesn't matter if you believe in God, not believe in God. It doesn't matter. Your own intuition, your own spiritual guide in that moment will tell you the truth. And if you're willing to stay with it for just one, maybe two more minutes, and you ask, okay, thank you, I believe that. Now, is there anything sitting beneath this truth that I should know, that I know is true on a deeper level? You will find that almost always the first thing that you can see is true, but it's being supported by a deeper truth or two or three. So when I say that all that is real in my life comes from the unseen world, that's what I'm talking about. It's the truth that is unconcerned with the top layers. My wife and I have gone through it, and we have a beautiful relationship. I love it. It is intimate. It is unifying. It is correcting. It is inspiring. It is everything that I hoped it would be, but only because I have come to value what sits beneath all the visible layers. So, I mean, I can even tell you just today, uh, my wife said, Danny, I feel like you've gone into victim mode. And that's why you're spending your time the way that you are, which I had perfectly rational and reasonable responses as to why I had to spend a little more time at work here or a little more time at work there. But she was totally right. And it just snuck up on me. I didn't even see it. Old Danny, 5 years ago, Danny would have been like, what the hell? How can you possibly say that? I am working so hard. Look, the reason I had to stay late over there was because that situation had to happen. It couldn't happen. And I could easily go through and defend myself. But the connection and the love that I have with my wife comes from underneath the layers. So when she says something, why would I ever take offense?
Well, you might want to write that one down. You might want to get a tattoo of that one, Danny.
Well, I'll tell you, do I still sometimes take offense? Yeah, but only when I'm concerned with what's up here. Never when I'm concerned with what's down here.
That's right. Yeah, from this side of complexity, right? It's like, I get it. All right, kind of, Danny, I really appreciate all the nuggets and wisdom you've shared. As we kind of wrap things up, a question that I have for you is like, what advice would you have for somebody that's like maybe thinking about going to a breathwork session or coming to an evolution project, or maybe they're in a place like listening to this right now where they're like, that sounds really nice for Bryan and Danny, but I'm different. My life's different, right? What would you tell that person?
I'd probably say, hey, if that's how you feel, I love it. Because there's no discovery until self-discovery. And self-discovery can only happen when the timing is right. So if you don't feel like this is, evolution project or breath work or anything of the sort is in the cards, that's great. And you are on your own path. You can't do your life wrong. I know we think usually otherwise. Usually, I'll just tell you, I have had plenty of markers that indicate whether I'm doing life right or wrong. But the truth is that God is so much more focused. He's focused on so many other things than those markers. And so if you don't feel called to it, if you don't feel like it's something that is what you want to do right now, then just keep walking your road, but leave the door open, because that may change. Maybe another thing that I would say is doing these types of things is an act of faith of some sort, because you don't know the end. You don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what you're supposed to get out of it. You don't know. You don't know. And I didn't know. And I would, if you're curious, just try it out. I promise that if you do a breathwork session and you didn't love it and you think it's dumb, that's great. You literally wasted 90 minutes of your life. Okay. You go to Evolution Project, don't love it, don't think you'll go back. Great. But my experience has been the opposite of that. Not just personally, but typically when people experience breathwork or they go to Evolution Project, it's probably been 90% on both counts that say, well, I didn't expect this. This was really, really good for me. But I will say that is only true of people that decided to go on their own. If they get dragged up there with somebody else because somebody else is going or this or that, then that experience is usually mixed. But if they choose to go and they say, I'll give it a shot, then the experience is good. But like I said, if it's not something that you're feeling, you just keep walking. You keep walking the path, however that looks to you.
Yeah.
Because it's the right one, actually.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, honoring people's agency and paths, right? I love that. You're always the right. How'd you say that? You're on everyone's, what was it? Well, Danny, do you have anything else you'd like to share? What I was hoping people would understand or maybe be able to see from you is like, Because I feel like right now you're in this place of life where you're like so accepting and zen in the sense of you have faith that everything's going to work out. You honor people's agency. And so it's like there's this I feel like I'm like talking to like Buddhist monk Danny right now. And I like that guy, you know. And what I would, you know, what I'm hoping is I wanted people to see what evolution actually looks like in people's lives,
Mm.
right? Because the truth is you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Now, the reality is our job here isn't to convince anyone that that has been the case. That's not the point. But what I do want to tell you is I feel like to some extent, whether you like it or not, everybody is having some conversation with life that life is inviting them into that we either answer or we don't, and we just keep walking down the path. The end of the year is often a time for people when they start to evaluate their life. Where am I at right now? What's going on in my life right now? Is this working? You know, what do I want to change? Most people just don't know how. I think that's a lot. I found myself in times of life where I was like, I was looping my conversation because I had so much identity around the story that I told myself. It just kept me hovering in the same place. And my life feels different than it used to, you know? And it's like, I just want that for people, you know? And it's like, you get what I'm saying? It's like, I
Yeah.
really, because on this side of complexity, like it's so, I just believe there really is this whole concept of like addition by subtraction. Does that make sense? Like I think this first my life, the way I experienced is like there was this period where I was like, grow, 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 more, learn, 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 stack, 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 commit, 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 right? And then you hit this point where it's like, man, this load is really freaking heavy. And then I started to say, okay, I need to add to the depth back into my life. And it actually required me to subtract or quage solve, as you told me once. And you
Solve
start finding out
coagulate.
what?
Solve coagulate.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty good at Latin, Danny. I don't like to brag about it, but you know, E tu brute, quage savule. Oh, see, this is what happens when I try to get out of my depth a little bit. No, but like I feel like one of the things I've observed about you is that like you really did this like process where you literally dissolved all these things down, all this part of your identity, all this stuff. And then you sat for about 10 months and you did nothing. I mean, you still showed up, but you were doing things differently. And it's like now you're coming back into your life on the other side of complexity. And I just feel like I remember you said something. You said, the life that I'm experiencing right now, I couldn't have handled 2, 3 years ago. Like I never would have thought it was possible. I just wasn't the person that was able to like live into this. Like
Yeah.
those are the things that I want people to see. My hope is that they can see that because it gives hope. It makes people think like, wait, maybe this is possible. Because the truth is, Danny, it's like you're special and you're not special, right? I mean, it's not just available to Danny.
No, no. In fact, what that brings up for me, Bryan, is that, as men in their 35 to 50-year-old range start to experience life in a different way than they did in their 20s, what happens is that the old constructs don't facilitate life in the same way that they used to. And we have seen this a lot at Evolution Project, and it was certainly true of myself. But when that happens, the way that I responded to that, and I believe, well, I'm just going to say it how I think it, which is one of the things that we have seen at Evolution Project is the same way that I experienced it, which is that I wanted to hang my issues, my discord, on one of three major components. It was either my marriage, it was my job, and it was God or my religion, one of those. And each of those comes out and expresses themselves in different ways. So, for example, when it's about your job, you start to listen and hear the literature that says, do the thing that you feel called to do. Do the thing that you feel the most passionate about. Do the thing that you feel like you're going to love. And you look around at your job and you're like, this ain't it. I don't love this. But and then it manifests itself differently in marriage. Same thing. It's like, who's this person? This person just can't see me for me, doesn't understand me. I work hard all day, all week. I provide a living, et cetera, doing the best I can. And yet that just never seems to get recognized. We're not connected. We're not. And then this is the key moment, is that they say something like, and if this is what the next 40 years of my life is going to be, count me out. And then with God or religion, as you start to open up the idea of religions in general, and you realize, oh my gosh, the religion that I'm a part of actually doesn't contain all the truth that there is to contain. But I've been taught my whole life that it does. Suddenly, the constructs start to fall off. And if men are unwilling to hold both of those things at the same time, which is that, yep, there's more to it than what you were taught, and what you were taught was still good. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Then a lot of times what happens is that those men will follow their mind and they will burn down one or all three of those situations. That is the complexity. And for as long as the issue remains outside of themselves, then they are almost certainly guaranteed to either burn it down or to enter a place of stasis where there's no progress, but there's also no connection, no true love, no understanding, anything like that. And that is, some men, for some reason, they come out of their 20s and all of this stuff just clicks for them and they get it. And if they end up with some level of difficulty in that age range we're talking about, they just kind of move through it and swim through it. But a huge percentage of men experience that, and they use the construct that they have put in place. They use the plaster that they have put in place and then say, well, it can't be me. That's when they burn it down. And of course, I don't mean violently burn it down. I'm just saying that's when they quit their job. That's when they do all those things. But if they'll stay with it and wade through the complexity, then what they will come to see is that they will totally resolve themselves and nothing else will change. They can stay married to the same woman. They can have the same religious viewpoints of God. They can stay in the same job and love all of them passionately. But nothing actually changed out there.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to recognize that I am the common denominator for all the issues that I feel like are in my life.
Yeah, it's a bitter pill.
It is a bitter pill, and it's a complex pill, because once you start to think that way, then you have to start to actually do and think some things that up to this point you've not been willing to think.
Danny, that reminds me of something. I'm going to try to find it really quick. Give me 1 second. And it's a story, and the story is about, okay, dude, it's okay. We got time. Why not? Here, let me look it up really quick. All right, here it is, dude. Is it okay if I read the story with you, Danny?
Yeah, please.
Okay, it goes like this. It goes, the little boy who put the world back together. There was a man who had a little boy he loved very much. Every day after work, the man would come home and play with the little boy. He would always spend all of his extra time playing with the little boy. One night while the man was at work, he realized that he had extra work to do for the evening and that he wouldn't be able to play with his little boy, but he wanted to be able to give his boy something to keep him busy. So looking around the office, he saw a magazine with a large map of the world. On the cover, he got an idea. He removed the map and patiently tore it up into small pieces. Then he put all the pieces in his coat pocket. When he got home, the little boy came running up to him and was ready to play. The man explained to him that he had extra work to do and he couldn't play now. And he led the little boy into the dining room and took out all the pieces of the map and spread them out on the table together with some scotch tape. He explained that it was a map of the world and that by the time the little boy could put it back together, his extra work would be finished and he could play. Surely this would keep the boy busy for hours. After about an hour later, the boy came to the man and said, "Okay, it's finished. We can play now." The man surprised, saying, "That's impossible. Let's go see it." And sure enough, the picture of the world was all put together, every piece in its place. The man said, "That's amazing. How did you do that?" The boy said, here's the heavy part, "It was simple. On the back of the page was a picture of a man. When I put the man together, the whole world fell into place." I love you, bye. And that's it. Anyway, Danny, one of the things I want to share with you is I really do want to express my gratitude because, you can't do the work by yourself and no one will do it for you. Some of the most profound moments I've had in my life over the last 5 years, you happen to be one of the people there. Sometimes that was individually. Sometimes that was in the room. Sometimes that was conversations we had on the phone. Sometimes that was on a drive down to Arizona, you know? And I just want to express my gratitude. I wish I could bottle those all up in some way and put that in a podcast and go, this is what it's like to have a really good friend named Danny that's, been there for me at really critical and important times in my life. And like I'm on, to some extent, I feel like I'm on the other side of complexity in a lot of areas of my life. Like I did blow up my business, so that was awesome. And I'm still doing it and I absolutely love it because I reconnected back to why I do it. Obviously, you got to see my wife there for a second, like that's awesome. And my relationship with God is real. Like that's the way I describe it. And, the Evolution Project is a part of that. But the reality is like my path of life, our path of life, we're all just walking each other home. My hope is that people got a little bit of that lightning and those moments where we're able to kind of put the man back together and the world all falls in place. So just a lot of gratitude.
Well, thank you, Bryan. And that is reciprocal because I actually think, where would I be today if I hadn't just bitten the bullet and called my friend Bryan, who was doing this stupid thing called the Evolution Project?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So I thank you for having the courage to do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Love you, man.
I got to find a better way to end the podcast. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. We really appreciate it. I got to get that down, dude. Danny, I'll see you on Sunday.
Hey, that last line in that story
Yeah.
would be a great way to end every podcast.
On the back of the page was a picture of the man. When I put the man together, the whole world fell into place.
And so you could end it like, and I'll just remind you one more time what the little boy said to put the world back together. And then you say that.
I love
Because
it.
that is so beautiful and so true. My wife had to fight until this man was put back together. And then there came a day that she didn't have to fight anymore, and it changed everything. Okay. Love you, man.
Love you too, Danny.
All right. See ya.
Bye. All right. We can stop recording. Daniela, that was a little over.